On you.
All right, so we're going to go over the 7702 or alert plan, and this video is to help educate not only your other advisors that you work with, but also your clients.
Yeah, we recognize that not everyone can join us. We're up at one of our study group events. And also we've had feedback from attendees that have been up here that they want kind of a refresher. It was a one-liner, it's something we said the way we said it. They want to be able to repeat that. So we've been asked quite a bit to kind of film this. So we're just going to go over the way we do pretty much every time and talk about what we really highlight.
Is that going to work if I point up here? Or is that in the way?
Get after it.
You good? Okay, so this is the history of the income, the federal income tax returns or tax returns.
And real quick while he's pulling that up, so a huge part of what we talk about, a huge believer, what I'm passionate in, taxes, taxes, taxes. It's important for all you guys to understand and message this to your client, your prospect, that why we're doing this is less about if you don't make it home one night that your kids can put food on the table. It's more about tax planning. And we've found that even tax professionals, CPAs, etc., can sometimes be short-sighted in immediate tax gratification. This is a different animal. This is all about long-term taxation, and it's about a Roth IRA alternative that a lot of your clients are unable to contribute to because of income phase-outs or contribution limitations. So that's the preface. Charles will dive into the history of the top marginal tax bracket.
So you'll see here we start in 1913, and the first major jump is World War I, and everybody could get behind why we had to get the taxes up for that. The second major jump is the Spanish flu and the first Great Depression. Then we go into this period where we're anywhere from 94 to, let's call it 50% taxation or higher, and we have this little shark fin in the late 60s, early 70s. That's where as a country we started to create things like pension plans, IRAs, 401ks. What we were trying to do back then as a country was hopefully defer taxes into a lower tax bracket. And it couldn't have gone any better than it did for our parents and our grandparents. But with that being said, you'll see over to the right, we've purposely left the U.S. deficit.
Technically the U.S. debt, to clarify.
The U.S. debt, we've left this, 3 years ago was 19 trillion with a T. Now it's 29 trillion with COVID. So the writing's on the wall, although it hurts when all of us have to stroke our taxes at the end of the year. We are in one of the lowest tax brackets in history.
We work with a lot of high income earners and business owners. They say, JT, I'm getting crushed with taxes. Like, what can we do? And the whole point of this is, believe it or not, to echo Charles, we're actually in super low tax environment on the top marginal bracket compared to history. So again, message your clients, remind them, and I think if you polled 100 people, 90 plus of them, probably 95 plus of them, are going to say, we believe taxes will be higher down the road than they are today. That is very crucial and sets up everything that we're talking about today for the next 10 minutes.
So 3 little R's on this graph. The first one is Ronald Reagan when he was born. Reagan is a famous movie actor. He made it publicly known that he was going to do 2 movies per year and then he was done. Because after that point, he got to keep 6 cents of every dollar he made. So he went on vacation. The last R is when Reagan was in the House, and not a political campaign. We just knew that everybody would know how much taxes changed during somebody's lifetime, the roller coaster that he experienced. So we'll scroll down, and to oversimplify any client, including all of us, the morning that you wake up and you're officially retired, you get 3 banks, 3 buckets to pull money from. The first one we all know really well, qualified assets. 401ks, IRAs, SEPs. We all understand it and we appreciate it because our parents had it, our grandparents had it. The companies we work at help promote it and educate it. So we know this one really well. The middle one is capital assets. This is where it gets a little more fun. Real estate, stocks, mutual funds, small businesses. Closely held businesses. And then the last one, this is where we experience that our clients have nothing in this last bucket. And it's the tax-free bucket. So when you need $100, you actually get $100. And one way you can do that we'll go over is Ross. So I'm going to skip back to the qualified assets. I call up JT and I say, I need $100. When I pull that money out, I'm only going to get $65 of the 100 because of the effective taxes I have to pay. The middle one is a little bit better.
Real quick on that with a qualified. So what do most people do? They need 100 to spend and live. So what do? They only got 65. They go out and take out more out of their qualified account to net the 100. Turns into a vicious circle where there's more and more taxation. And we've found that a lot of clients and frankly some advisors are over allocated in a tax deferred bucket, which is what we call the qualified asset. I always say if this were to scale, that purple bucket, the qualified bucket, the tax deferred or tax qualified bucket, would take up the entire page for a lot of clients. Meanwhile, the tax-free asset, it's like a pen tip. I mean, it's virtually nothing. The other thing, as Charles was going to the capital assets, a lot of people, if that were to scale, that orange bucket would take up the entire page. And guess what? You guys know that business owners, we talked about it earlier today with some of the advisors here today, their business is their retirement plan. They don't have traditional retirement plans or any significant value. It's all tied up there. So if cap gains go up, and we jokingly created this 3 years ago, and we said, what if cap gains went to 50%? At this point, they were only 15. Of course, it went to 20, arguably 23.8 right now, and it could go close to 50 with state and federal. And we said, look at the tax erosion in your biggest asset class, your business, or anything with capital gains treatment. Same problem, that vicious circle that Charles described. I need to spend money. I only have one place to get it.
So in order to create tax diversification, which we have at the top, it's great to have all of these different banks or buckets. But depending on what's going on with the taxes, what's going on with maybe some of your real estate holdings, your business holdings, you want to have diversification as to which of these that you pull out from. And what we ask clients to do is at least put enough into this tax-free bucket to pay for the taxes on the other two. So let's just pretend on the qualified and the capital on $100,000 to live off of. Let's say you owe the government 20 grand. We want you to pull the 20 grand out of here so that you're not pulling 20 grand out of here or over here and paying additional taxes. Does that make sense? All right. So we've talked a lot today about Ross, one of my favorite, because it grows tax deferred and it comes out tax free. The challenge is the government got their hands on it 2 times. Neither one were good for any of us or our clients. The first change they came in and they said is if you make too much money, you can't put in. And then they said, oh, by the way, if you can put in, you only can put in $6,500 a year. So it's just too minimal to build that bucket.
It doesn't move the needle for wealthier clients. It can do okay for middle America, but wealthier clients can't move the needle. So some of my favorite attributes, because that's the other bit. We talk about taxes. We talk about this as an asset. Life insurance, cash value life insurance as an asset class, and filter it in. You guys do multifaceted planning for your clients. This is an asset class with tax treatment unlike any other investment structure you have, arguably other than the Roth IRA. So a couple highlights here: no 59.5 penalty. I'm 41, I'm almost 41. For me, that's a big deal. In 20 years, I can take all the money I want in the form of a loan against my cash value, no taxation. Not true with a Roth IRA. On the back end, RMDs. A lot of clients get fed up with RMDs in traditional retirement accounts. No RMDs in this vehicle. One of my favorite things is it's not a use it or lose it proposition. I'll take a real estate, individual real estate broker. If they have a huge year one year, they want to stuff as much as they can, and I'll take a SEP IRA. Well, if they have a bad year the next year and they don't fund their plan, and then the following year, what if they're like, hey, I just want to double up? Well, no, it's an annual use it or lose it proposition. With our designs, if that same realtor used an after-tax Roth alternative plan, if they have a bad year, they can skip funding entirely and double up and get back on track in subsequent years. That's a big deal that doesn't get talked about enough, in my opinion.
And the other two is you have the ability to have upside in the market with no downside risk. And as soon as you say that, the client's looking at you like, what is this snake oil? What are you talking about? I get upside potential, no downside risk.
And I always say a lot of our advisors are RIA, AUM, they're wealth managers. I say, can you name very many financial vehicles, investments that contractually in writing will guarantee year over year over year over year, you will never take a loss. You may get a zero, but you will never take a loss. And you ride the upswing if and when that index rebounds. That is a little bit elementary, but it's a big deal for you to convey to your clients. In that situation, we're going to elaborate on it here. Volatility is your friend. That's important. I'll miss losses all day long and ride the upswing all day long. And what you have is the orange line here and not the purple line. Charles, you want to cover that?
Yeah, and so the reason we put this piece together is when we talk about upside potential, not downside risk, we all know as investment advisors that that's a derivative, it's an index. But most of the clients have no idea what we just said. So what you'll see is the lost decade, 2000 to 2010. And if you were just purely in the S&P 500, you would be on the purple line here, where you go on a landslide, you come back up, but then in the same decade, you go on another landslide, and you almost get back to where you started.
And just the two downsides, the dot-com bubble in the early years, the 3 years, the only time it's ever been negative 3 times, and then 08. So that's the period of time we're talking about.
If you were in a derivative, an index, which JT was touching on, you've got a floor of 0 and a cap of 12 in our example. That's your guardrails. So the first 3 years, floor 0. It goes up 26%, you only get 12. Same decade it drops, you floor out at 0, comes up 23%, you only get 12. That methodology of investing was 87% difference. Just by having it. It doesn't matter if that was in life insurance, an annuity, what it was. But the person that was in the orange, on average, their account grew by 5.5%. The person in the purple, they lost money.
And this has nothing to do with life insurance directly. We're not talking about fees and charges. That's a separate animal. We want to convey to the client the power of indexing, missing losses, earning gains, and that cannot be understated. The lost decade was down 15 to 20% total return in a 10-year period versus up 56, I believe. So we have almost a 5% compounded rate of return average in the worst 10-year period of the S&P 500 there's ever been. That's important. I ask a lot of advisors and clients, what do you think is going to happen in the next 10 years? Way up, way down, or a little bit flat? I'm getting a lot of volatility, a little bit of flat, modest growth. The takeaway here is our design, missing losses, riding upswing, can produce a 5% average annualized return that is not easy to get in the market.
This next piece we're going to do is called compared to what. You can take just about anything and put it in this software. But with this example, we used, again, assets under management because most clients have that, they understand it. And we put it side by side with a life insurance, a retirement plan, a LIRP, 7702 plan. And so we took a 50-year-old who put in $100,000 a year, and it's going to be hard to see on the screen, as small as it is, for 10 years. And we showed when they take the money out of their account, they take it out in what's referred to as a withdrawal. You withdraw the money from the account. There's nothing left for the money managers in the room to manage. You took the withdrawal, it's out of the account.
And more specifically, you're typically liquidating securities in order to take that withdrawal. You're selling securities, guess what else happens? You create taxation. That's an important deal. Now you're at the mercy of the tax environment every year when you're liquidating securities to take a cash withdrawal to go spend in retirement.
So on our example, our 50-year-old, from 50 to age 60, they put in 100 grand each and every year for 10 years. They would get to enjoy income, spendable income of $176,000 from ages 65 all the way to age 76.
You're talking about on the investments.
On the investments, yeah.
And by the way, this is net of taxes and net of management fees.
Now, by age 76, the money's exhausted. And again, it's because they took out so many withdrawals, there's nothing left to manage. There's nothing left for them to take. The account's been exhausted.
And you may be wondering, where did that 176 come from? We can resolve for that to say, what is the lesser amount that I can spend to have it last to 100? But where we got the 176, it's kind of a little backwards, but we started with our IUL-based plan, our Roth alternative plan, to create $176,000 of lifetime tax-free income with the floor of 0, the upside potential, and a death benefit of a couple $1 million. God forbid you don't make it home one night. It does have death benefit obviously as well. When we solved for the maximum income tax-free that we can take out, that's where that 176 came from. And that's why we showed, compared to what, taking it out of the typical investment account where it runs out of steam.
So to the right side, our life insurance 7702 plan, same 100,000, same amount of time. We take out the 176, same age, but you'll notice it continues all the way for the rest of this client's life. And the reason for that is there's 3 ways you can take money out of this account. You can take it out as the form of a withdrawal, just like the assets under management. You can take it out as a standard loan, and you can take it out as a participating loan. We're gonna go over that in more detail, but that's the secret sauce to this, is because you can take the money out in the form of a loan and you don't have to only do a withdrawal, that's why you get to still get these type of investment returns on money you're using for something else.
The other thing too, there is a death benefit. It's hard to see, but at life expectancy, call it age 90, there's about $1.3 million of tax-free death benefit that goes on to the next generation. And if you recall, we put in 100 for 10 years. So that's still, you've spent all that retirement income tax-free, and there's still a 30% bump tax-free that goes to the next generation over your principal paid, your original contribution.
So this is going to go into more detail on what we just talked about. Withdraw to cost basis, then go to standard loans or take participating loans. So in our example, we showed that if you just took fixed loans, you would be able to get to enjoy $85,000 of income per year. And the way that works is you take out a loan of 85 grand, they charge you 2.25, but they credit you 2% in the same year. So it's a negative 0.25 wash.
And just to clarify that, with traditional life insurance, been around 40 plus years, what he just described, the money that you take out as a loan is removed from your policy, what I call the crediting engine, the normal portfolio rate, or in our case, the indexed crediting engine. It's placed in a low conservative interest bearing account. It credits 2 and it's charged 2.25. So both animals, the debit and the credit, are in this side vehicle. It's very important. I've created a negative 25 basis point cost on money that I take out and spend during retirement. That's been done for 40 plus years. That's a traditional or a fixed loan. Now, I can do what some of you guys are familiar with, a withdrawal to cost basis, taxation 101 of life insurance policies. I take out my basis first tax-free. If I were to keep taking withdrawals, it would become taxable. So what they've done for 40 years, at that point in time, I have to switch to a loan. They would go to the fixed loan and incur a 25 basis point charge. But I got a lot of money out with no 25 basis point charge. It was my basis as a withdrawal. Now, where the third and the most important option comes into play is, what if I could have my money that I go and spend at retirement continue to participate in this crediting engine? We use the example 0 floor, 12% cap. The bad news is they're going to charge me, they being the insurance company, double the rate of borrowing my own money against my policy. It's about 5% instead of 2.25%. That's the bad news. The good news is it participates in the index performance. So you might be thinking, what's the catch? The catch is you have to fundamentally believe that inside of these derivatives, the index, what I call the crediting engine, it needs to do north of 5%, not every single year, but over the long haul. And as Warren Buffett always says, you know, I'm going to bet on America all day long. I want to bet on the 500 biggest and best companies that drive the U.S. economy while missing all losses and participating in double-digit gains in the good years. Historically, if you do Monte Carlo simulations, etc., it's done about 7.5% with that methodology. So all I need to do is beat 5. If I do 7.5, the insurance company charged me 5%, credited me 7.5%. Now, instead of a negative 0.25% cost, I have a positive 250 basis point arbitrage. There's no other financial vehicle that you can create an arbitrage and do it in a Roth IRA wrapper with downside protection of a 0%. That's why I have a good chunk of my liquid wealth in this vehicle. I have multiple policies that do this. I like to do real estate deals. I pull money, I borrow from this tax-free. Again, I'm 41, I'd normally be hit with 59.5 penalties, and I go up, do other stuff with my money. I have to believe long-term that my policy is going to do north of 5%, and I'll take that bet all day long.
And the good news is you can have a standard loan, and on your contract annual basis, you can change that standard loan to a participating loan.
So if the advisor or the client is bearish for a stretch, whether it's the president sitting in the house, tax changes, whatever, you can switch from this participating loan while you're in retirement, play it safe, go into the fixed loan or the traditional loan. You will be charged a negative 2.25%, but that's better than that participating loan. If I take a 0, they're charging me 5%. I had a negative 5% arbitrage in that 1 year versus a known negative 0.25% arbitrage.
So now we're going to talk about fees. So as we're educating clients and professionals about this, we talked about everybody knows they need tax diversification. They now kind of understand this whole notion of what an index is. They know how they get their money out, but they're starting to understand it. But if they say it or not, they're thinking in the back of their mind, insurance is expensive. Compared to what? And so what we did is, again, we designed a brokerage account, an AUM account, and we put it head to head with a life insurance plan. And we wanted to see short term what those charges were and long term what those charges are. And when we got done making this one pager, it was we were shocked at how inexpensive, as long as you're looking at a long term investment on the life insurance side, the actual all-in fees and charges are.
So on the investment side, we assumed a 7% gross return, management fees of 1.5. That's the assumption. And you can see we'll take year 15 at 50 grand a year for 10 years with the growth. You're at about 900,000 of investment account value. This is a non-qualified account. In this example, we're not talking about any taxation. Presumably, you guys are making trades, managing assets for the client. There's short-term and long-term cap gains. Those are not factored in here. 900 grand. The fees in that 1 year at 1.5, 13,371. It is what it is. People all across America play in that sandbox, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. We go over to our side, and we say, what are our fees, costs, charges, commissions, all in year 15? I have 922,000 of cash surrender value. I have $748 of all in cost, charges, and fees. That's 0.08%, 8 basis points as a function of 922 grand. Now, you might be thinking, well, what's the catch? Something doesn't smell right. Charles, tell me about the early charges.
So these are the scary charges. So if you look at the assets under management, it's a function of what the account value is. So it's very small. As it goes up over time, of course, the charges go up because the advisor's doing a good job and he's making the client more money. With life insurance, they heap all of the charges, commissions, all up front in the first 10 years. So you see these charges. If you're looking at this as a short-term investment, you should run, not walk away from it, because the life insurance company is going to laugh all the way to the bank. Now, if you stay in it long-term, we're going to go down to where this rubber meets the road, and we highlighted the all-in charges of both accounts. If you total them up, at this person's age of 85, life expectancy. So with the assets under management, the total all-in fees was 822 grand, and with the life insurance, it was 182,000.
So going back to those early charges, you'll see, and we're fully transparent with our advisors and our client. One of the biggest bad raps that cash value insurance products get is in year 2, in year 3, the liquidity, the cash surrender value is horrendous. In this example, in year 3, I've put in $150,000. The surrender value is $115,000. As Charles said, the insurance company is going to laugh all the way to the bank. If your client, if this was the last liquid source of money that your client possibly had, and he had to go get this and he had to walk away, wouldn't be a good deal. Those early charges would kind of kick his teeth in, for lack of a better term. But we have to look at this long term, reminding ourselves the tax advantages, the risk advantages, and in this case, the long-term fee advantages of this strategy versus a traditional investment account.
Our goal is, if we design this right, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but you'll notice it's hard to see again. The death benefit goes up, goes down. We try to keep it as small as possible in all years. When you get to the life expectancy, as a function of the deposits, you are trying to keep the all-in charges around 1% or less. That's the goal. And if you can do that, that's akin to AUM, that's a win. So a lot of times we'll go through all these one-pagers and clients will ask the question, how realistic are these illustrations? You're talking about a 7% return or a 6% return. Is that, in reality, could that happen? And just like we talked about, the Roth IRA had 2 important changes to it that kind of affected our best clients. In our world, we had AG 49A. And there were 3 phases we're going to talk about that went through this. The first phase came to us in 2015, and they said, you are going to limit how much you can run the illustrative rates at, which honestly was a good thing for the industry, because it took it from being run at, say, 9%, and they said now the max you can show is 6.5, 7. Even if it averaged 9%, that's the max. So if you were to look at an illustration before 2015, the income at 9% would have been $354,000 in this example.
So this is the same product, the same illustration, the same contractual terms, but industry regulators have pulled the reins in. That's important to understand why they're doing this. And as Charles is walking you through, they have ramped up the regulation more and more. And what we've seen is the illustrated rate, that and the spendable income that we're allowed to show, tax-free income, has gone down, down, down successively. And that's what Charles will point out in these later phases of the regulation.
So 2014, $354,000 of income. Same contract like JT just said. We changed the rate after the first phase of 2015. It goes down to $312. In the winter of 2016, they came out, and on the participating loans, JT talked about if they charge you they charge you 5 and you get credited 7, you get to keep 2% positive arbitrage. They came out and they said, we don't care what is happening, you only get to show 1. And it was like, all right, well, that's not how the contract works, but I guess we'll try to roll with that. That same income went from 350 to 312 to now 281. Now, it's still tax-free income, so it's still a good deal, but there's a lot of governors being put on these illustrations. So this last one came out in the fall of last year, 2020. And what it said is that 1% is now going to be 0.5%.
Yeah.
So
they chopped it in half. The arbitrage that historically I can show in the illustration 30-year average returns of 7.5% to 8%, and I can show contractually the participating loan is 5%. Again, like the regulator said, we don't care about any of that. The max you can show is now chopped in half from a 1% positive arbitrage to a 0.5% arbitrage. They've pulled the reins in again, and that has further depressed the illustratable income that I can take out of it. The moral of the story here is arguably in 2015, you could argue that it was a little overzealous. Now we're getting to the point where I firmly believe we're under promising and going to vastly over deliver because of the contractual provisions. Forget about the illustration that we're allowed to show and present.
So at the end of the day, when the client asks, is this realistic? We can all, sleep easy knowing that it's probably going to do better than 5.5%. And we can't even show you how these participatings really work at this point. So these are very, very, I would say, scaled back illustrations to what the client can actually expect. And like JT, I also have money into these. I've got a policy last year that did 15%. That's a lot different than getting 5.5%. So that's something that we want to make sure our clients understand, but celebrate the fact that these illustrations are probably going to be showing lower income than what they can actually expect.
So to recap briefly, we talked about taxes. We talked about taxes going up, and a lot of people believing they could go up. We talked about how this is akin to a Roth IRA, but with no income phase outs. You could make $1 million a year and put as much as you wanted into this. There's no contribution limits. You could put $1 million a year into this if you wanted to. And then we went on to fees and charges, and we showed you that it could arguably be less than a traditional managed account. So taxes are good, fees are good. We went over risk and the ratchet effect, like the tool in the garage. It can only go up and can never go down year over year. And we talked about obviously the death benefit. When you wrap all those things together for a high income earning client that is sick and tired of getting phased out of every tax break out there, this is one of the last things that he can do as a high income earner to get into competitive fees, death benefit, tax-free income, risk protected, and finally we went over the participating loan that I don't know of any vehicle that can do that inside of all those other features.
And encourage your clients to research 7702 of the code. They can Google it. The more they learn about it, the better. And that's how we do a lot of the interactions with our clients is referrals. That's how we've survived the last 20 years. So if you have any more questions on this, we'll have more supporting documents on it and we can send them out to you.
Thank you.